Welcome to Grappling with the Gray, forum for promoting an ethical mindset and ethical decision-making to more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I'm Rabbi Yonason Goldson, and I'd like to I've already invited them. I'd like to introduce my guests for today. With me is Deb Coviello, also known as the Drop-In CEO. She's an author, speaker, podcast host, and silver medalist curler who coaches C-suite leaders of today and tomorrow to navigate challenges with confidence. Diane Helbig is Chief Improvement Catalyzer at Helbig Enterprises, providing guidance and training to business owners and leaders around the world. And with me is Raj Tut, who is founder and CEO of Storyboard Living, creating communities that provide a safe, beautiful backdrop for life's greatest moments. Thank you all for being with me today.
Thank you, Yonason.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And here is our topic. A young woman shows up at a company office to interview for an administrative position. Her resume is impressive. She is dressed professionally, and she enjoys a cordial and comfortable conversation with the interviewer. As the interview seems to be winding down, she feels confident and encouraged when, out of the blue, the interviewer says, "May I look in your purse?" The candidate is caught completely off guard. When she asks why, the interviewer replies, "It's the best indicator of a woman's organizational character." More bewildered than before, the candidate hands over her purse. The interviewer looks quickly through it, hands it back, then thanks the candidate for coming and shows her to the door. A few days later, she receives an email that her application was not successful. This case, which was posted online, generated considerable speculation as to the interviewer's motive. What did they hope to learn? Why might the candidate have been rejected? And should she have handed over the purse when asked? Other stories include the interviewer who gives candidates a wobbly chair to see if they would speak up and ask for a different one, or the interviewer who invites candidates out for a drink to see if he can get them drunk. Assuming that the intent is to discover insights into the candidate's character, are these kinds of tactics ethical or are they deceptive? Even if they reveal what the interviewer hopes to discover, are they worth the cost of undermining trust and respect? And how should interviewees respond if they feel boundaries are being crossed by their prospective employers? The floor is open.
If I may go first, again,
Yeah.
this begs a number of other questions about the character of the either person or the trust in the company. As far as transparency, because often when we show up for an interview, there are certain expectations. Who are we meeting with? Functional areas. You have some understanding of what you're walking into. And to your point, I think that does cross boundaries when they are looking for something of personal to be able to assess character. Couldn't they have asked questions and asked them to provide examples and stories to be able to qualify, quantify whether they fit the bill and meet the expectation? Again, it's when you catch somebody off guard, the trust factor goes down a bit.
Yeah, it's so funny, Deb. I was thinking the same thing, that instead of doing some sort of trick or ploy, that there are questions you can ask, open-ended questions to ask them about, a situation they've been in and to share the situation and how they resolved it or whatever it is. And I'm sort of stuck on, I'm not quite sure how what's going on inside my purse tells you what my organizational, I don't know, personality or whatever it is. So, was that really what they were going for? Or were they going to see what her reaction was going to be? Is that what is being gauged?
Oh,
I was kind of wondering, what do they do with men? Do they ask to look in their wallet?
I know, right?
I know.
Look in their pockets.
And if so, is that a sign of my organizational skills also, or
Right?
or does it really have more to do with how do they respond in an unusual situation? In which case, what's the right answer? Say, mind your own business.
Help me understand how that's going to give you the answer that you want. I mean,
Nice.
Yeah.
As much as I'd like to take the opposite side of this, just to make the conversation a little more interesting, I don't see the gray in this scenario at all. I think it's very black and white. It's a clear invasion of privacy, and I'm not an expert in HR law, but I would imagine that the going in someone's purse as a part of an interview process is a lawsuit waiting to happen. I know in our business, there have been stories of landlords that will look at the organization of someone's vehicle when they go to look at an apartment to see if they're going to be a messy resident or not, and that's very much against fair housing laws. So that's also not a gray situation, but very similar, I think, to this situation that we're discussing.
So I'll play devil's advocate on that. That's great. And so because I'm with you, but I'll play devil's advocate on it. It's not as if the interviewer grabbed the woman's purse and looked in it. He asked and explained whatever. And so she had options, right? She could have said, I don't understand what that has to do with my organizational skills. If you can give me more information, then, you know, it logically, whatever. Or she could have said, no, you know, go ahead. There's nothing in there that's going to be surprising. So for me, it's a little, you know, that's a little different, right? They're asking for permission and she's giving it. So for me, the gray is what's their goal, you know, what are they trying to accomplish?
I see the value, just from you saying that, I see the value of this conversation. Because my gut, when you said that, I wanted to jump in and just say the person doing the interview is in a position of power.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Although that may be the case, what if they are looking to hire someone that will speak up even in that position when they're not in a position of power? So thanks for sharing that and taking the opposite side there.
Sure.
I'm going to counter you on that one. I'll one up you. Position of power, and that's something I talk about when I try to coach leaders, is it's about perception. There may be, you know, physical power like from strength, title, position, etc., but those are artifacts imposed by humans. And I'd like to change the conversation. They're equals. They're both sitting at the table. Yes, one can make the decision to change the destiny of the person, but the person in the room took the decision to be in the room for the interview. They can choose how they act. She chose to dress up nice and have an impeccable interview. And the fact that I asked for, you know, permission to look deeper, they're equals. There's no power here. She may have given up her power, or she may have free will given into this. So just know that we do have choices even when we're in precarious situations.
And you know, so it's so interesting because then then my thought is, if that happened when you walked out of the interview, would you say to yourself, wow, I'm not so sure this is the place for me? Because if they're doing weird stuff like that all the time, I think right? Because as you said, free will equals it at the table. They get to ask whatever they want. She gets to respond any way she wants, but it's not as if this is the only job in the world that she can apply for. So she has to make that judgment as well.
And that was actually one of the comments on the posting. Woman said that, you know, her response would be to take her purse, stand up, and decline the job offer by walking out. But at the same time, you know, when people are interviewing for jobs, they feel under pressure. They feel, you know, I'm applying for this job because I think it's a good job for me. And then we start having to make these evaluations. Well, now is it worth compromising on the trust, on my personal boundaries, in order to get a job that on paper looks like something that's very good? You know, it's that can be a really tough call depending on the options that a person has available.
But that brings up a whole other thing about culture. And isn't that a warning sign that there's the possibility that this is what you're walking into? And so a job is more than the paycheck and the function that you're doing. You're in a community and an environment with people, and that feels sort of psychologically unsafe to me.
Yeah, and I would go one step further. And what if just before the interview, everything fell out of the purse, and in haste to get there on time and present themselves the right way, never thinking somebody would want to look inside their purse except maybe to get a pen, it is in disarray. So again, shame on those that make superficial judgments without
Yeah.
getting to know the person.
I'd like to come up with an actual scenario, and there probably is one. Maybe somebody's more creative than I am on the spot, but imagine if after giving over her purse, the interviewer had an explanation that sounded completely reasonable and said, well, this is what we were looking for, and you've passed the test. Would that retroactively make it okay?
I sort of feel like they should be upfront at the beginning. I mean, Deb, didn't you say something about transparency? I mean,
Yes.
you're welcoming this person, or you're trying to see if you're doing a good job. You're trying to see if this person fits with your community, fits with your culture, can be successful in your environment. Are they someone who you want in there? And so I would think the more upfront and transparent you are, the more both of you get to determine if this is a good fit.
Just people shouldn't forget the fact that you go in sometimes with the attitude of, yes, they have power and they make the decision, yes or no. But again, we have our own power. We too make the decision whether we want the opportunity. We
Right.
choose how we show up in these interviews. And if something in your gut makes you feel uncomfortable, even if they prescribe what it is, if your gut still says this still doesn't feel right, even if the explanation was rational, go with your gut, versus mentally, oh, I need that job.
Yeah.
The ramifications and the regrets could be long, long time.
Yeah.
How would you feel about this scenario if the person truly needed the job because it's a tough job market, or maybe they need to put food on the table, and they're in a country or a place where employers are pushing the envelope during the interview process, like looking in purses or doing other things to find the right candidate? How would you feel differently, or would you still feel like it's two parties that are consenting to, this interview process, and or does that change anything? I'm just curious.
So my response to that, two sides, yes, we have to be creative in order to gain insights about individuals. And if not, let me look in your purse. There could be other things, well-crafted questions supplied by the HR department to understand certain characteristics. That's possible. And for those that need that job, I often talk about, when you're thinking about that next opportunity, is it something you want for title, prestige? Is it something you need financially? And is it something you're passionate about? And I find that if you can only get 1 out of 3, you're only going to be good for 6 months, and you're going to be looking for the next job. If you get 2 out of the 3, a couple years. But obviously, if you can get all 3, if you're passionate about it, yeah, then, it's a good situation. But clearly you can understand if you need it, fine. But keep your eyes open for any other red flags that, again, violate your values or your ethics.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if you do
and
take
she
the
didn't.
job,
I'm
just
sorry.
briefly, if you do take the job, you're going to have your antenna up all the
Oh,
time,
yeah.
waiting for the next
Yes.
thing, and that's
Yeah.
going to have an impact on both you and your performance in the job.
Well, maybe, but so she didn't get the job. So I feel like there's a follow-up that should have happened. Like, when they reached out and said, thanks so much, but whatever, you're not getting the job. I think I would have followed up to say, would you mind sharing with me what it was that tipped the scale? And if I got the job, because I really needed it, whatever, and I passed whatever the test was, I think I'd ask. I think I'd say, I've been so curious since I left your office. Could you explain to me what that exercise was and what your goal of that exercise was? Because that would really, help me understand better
Yeah, and there's a piece of that because again, Rabbit talks about this all the time when we can't engage in conversations because we profile people and we think ill will about the other person because it violates our values or our gut. But to your point, ask, seek to understand, help me why I did or did not. You might gain perspective, and the greater outcome could be if you didn't get that job, maybe the next job because you're still
Right.
investing in the relationship,
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah. We let it go, right?
Mhm.
We let it go that, hey, I want to look in your purse. Okay. And then we don't get the job and we go, okay. But we're not curious, it's just, we don't think we have the right. I feel like that's really what this is about is,
Mm.
rights and what rights we really have in any situation.
What about the wobbly chair
Ooh.
that we talked about? I mean, it's not exactly deceptive.
Yeah.
I like that one.
You like that one?
Yeah, I feel like that one it's a little more playful, you're not invading anyone's privacy. It's and if that's the type of person you need in whatever role you're hiring for, I feel
Yeah.
like that one is not doing any harm to anyone. That just my opinion. I kind of liked it.
That one feels like personality, like you're trying to check their personality and do they fit, right? Yeah.
Are you a problem solver? Do you speak up when you see something that's not right?
Regardless of the situation, right? An interview is a high stress situation. How do you engage? I feel like that one is reasonable.
That's interesting. And there's, even though I, as the interviewer, and am intentionally and somewhat surreptitiously putting you in a situation that you wouldn't really anticipate. I'm contriving a situation in order to see what your reaction is. That could still be perhaps a legitimate technique.
I feel like it could. Yeah. And maybe it depends on the position that you're going for, right? If it's a leadership position, yeah, all day, because I need to know how you handle difficult situations, right? Stressful situations. Do you speak up? Are you willing to, be odd man out if that's what the situation calls for? And so I think that's an interesting test.
I'm going back through this scenario that you provided to us, and it says it's the best indicator of a woman's organizational character. Sometimes, again, when I coach people on going into interviews, I talk about controlling the conversation rather than handing over the purse to, and I think Diane, you said, well, help me to understand why, and have a conversation about the indicators of one's organizational character, because maybe at home, maybe in the workplace, your desk, you are highly organized because you focus where those priorities are. That's where the work is done, highly efficient. The purse, the wallet, whatever may be the last thing, the lowest priority for which you seek organization. Don't look in the corner at
Yeah.
my big load of laundry because my kids are fed and well dressed and they get out the door on time.
Yeah.
Probably one advice could have been, let's have a conversation about that, because that would then really bring out that person's personality and assess who they are.
I just thought of this. I've probably seen one episode of Seinfeld in my life. But
Only one?
yeah. I was living abroad for most of it, and I just never got into it when I got back. But what's her name? Julia
Dreyfus.
Right.
Elaine.
And she's sitting outside and waiting for an interview, and she'd actually accidentally taken somebody else's purse. And she starts looking through it, and she finds that there's like there are nylons, and there's a scarf, and she turns herself from this schlumpy looking ne'er-do-well into this very sophisticated looking professional, and then walks in and gets the job. So
Now, is that ethical?
there you go. I was looking at her own
Showing up
purse.
as someone
She's
she's
gone.
not? Just saying.
What about taking somebody out for a drink and seeing if you can get them drunk?
That one's so old school. I am amazed if anyone is still doing that, but I remember that, and it wasn't necessarily to get them drunk, it was to see if they would order a drink or if they would order a soft drink, just to see how they would engage in the situation. And I sort of feel like that is telling.
I'm torn because one could order a soft beverage to maintain their wherewithal, make sure they maintain their professional demeanor if they know that things could change. On the other hand, you got to know your environment. Could be a sales, and I'm not trying to profile, but sales environment for which socializing is a big part of engagement with others. And how are you able to engage with others while you're maybe having an alcoholic beverage?
Yeah.
So it's the environment might say it's acceptable versus not.
So it's situational.
Mhm.
Depends on the job.
Yeah, in fact, my son got a job with a Wall Street finance bank, investment bank, and they took all of the new hires, out on a cruise. I don't know which body of water in the New York area it was, but it was an evening of drinking and music and socializing. And a couple of the new guys, right, just out of college, they had a little too much to drink, and someone dared them to jump off the boat and swim to shore. And they did, or they tried. They did the jumping off part. I'm not sure whether they made it to shore or not, but they did not have jobs the next day. And it wasn't intended to be part of the vetting process,
Yeah.
but the company felt, you're going to be in charge of investments that are going to involve hundreds of millions of dollars. If you don't have the judgment not to jump off a boat, we don't want you
Exactly.
here.
Right. That is definitely a judgment call. But it does lead to another question. And do you think that interviewers should be able to look at people's social media and to see, like their college days or whatever?
I think so. I think if you have stuff out there you don't want the public to see, you should keep it private or delete it. And if you're going to be a representative of a company in some capacity, no matter what your role is, then I think social media today is an extension of the individual. So my opinion is that it's fine to search it up, because if we excuse it as the college days or when they were young, what if they put something racist out there or something that you don't want tied to your company or someone that represents your company?
So does it then, that sounds like it depends on what the content is, because like if someone's in their 40s and they're looking for a job, the internet was around, right? And they were stupid
Yes.
college kids. And I have to say, honestly, that I am so grateful the internet did not exist when I was in college, because I would probably still be working in a bar because no one would have hired me based on that. But, young people, their prefrontal cortex isn't developed. And so we're sort of punishing them for something they really don't necessarily have control over.
Yeah, I mean, that's a topic that we've addressed in the past on this show, that people are held accountable for things they did many, many years before, sometimes when they were very young,
Yeah.
often things that they have repudiated. Yeah, I just heard, and I didn't check into it, but apparently there were several members of the Olympic committee that were dismissed because of things that were found, some of which happened many years before. So, I think that you made a point that I think is astute, that if it's my own social media platform, my own Facebook or LinkedIn, and I'm leaving things on there from 20 years ago that I should be embarrassed about,
Yeah, right.
that says something. But if they
That's a good
find
point.
some picture of me, I mean, somewhere out there is a picture of me in a full-length evening gown from college. I looked really good in it too. But I wouldn't particularly want that floating around.
I'm going to look for it now.
Well, good luck. I mean, it was before anybody ever heard of the internet, but we've all done foolish things in our lives, and we shouldn't be held accountable, especially when we're minors, but even when we're younger. But if it's something I'm still celebrating,
Yeah, right.
then
That's
that does
interesting.
speak to my character. Or it's something that somebody got a shot of me in an embarrassing position, and now it's out there, and I can't get rid of it. That
Yeah.
shouldn't be held against me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
And
does
then
say something about being conscious of our behavior these days, because someone, not only is someone always watching, but someone's usually recording.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the things I think, Diane, we talked about before we jumped on here was just consistency of content, because social media can be an enhancement to, like, you show up in the interview and then you consistently see the same quality. They always seem to be dressed up and, you know, shared values, etc., versus you know, you still have the crazy ones and you keep switching your positions or what have you. You got to be careful about that. So, I mean, social media could be a benefit for you. Again, it builds trust, that you know, your personal brand or what your character is consistent. Those things should provide valuable in assessing one's character and dependability for that role.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
get that.
we have a congressperson in our district who was just voted out, for which many of us are extremely grateful. And I made a meme last night and stayed up later than I normally do because I was having fun doing it. And then I was just about to post it, and I thought, is this really on brand for me?
Right.
So I put it in the family chat on WhatsApp. And I decided, even Facebook, it just didn't belong out there. It wasn't going to do any good.
It's not worth it. It creates more headaches than, I mean, I'm on the board of a national organization, the local chapter of a national organization, and we were told as board members, we cannot endorse, you know, say anything positive or negative, whatever, because we lobby in DC for legislation for women business owners. And so any one of us, if we picked a side on something, like I can have a side on anything, but if I pick a side out loud, it hurts our effort when we go on the Hill, and they can look at it and say, well, that person represents your organization. And so we know where you stand, even though we don't, you know, and so the organization doesn't, we're bipartisan. So, you know, I have to actually deal with it with my chapter because people are posting.
No, when you you take a position, when you, by accepting that position with them, you are accepting that you are now representing that organization.
That's
And
right.
so that does mean you have to curtail
Yep.
your public persona. If you don't want to, don't take the position.
Right. That's right.
You
I'm
know,
not sure these people on my board realized it when they maybe we're in an election year. I'm just saying.
you know, and I was just thinking about a personal situation. You know, sometimes we have places where we're not as organized, and again, people are trying to assess your character, but you can be transparent. Look what you see here. It's highly organized, but I actually took a video once and showed all the messes on the floor. This is behind the scenes of the drop-in CEO. But then there's transparency to say, I appreciate organization. That's how I show up. That's how I want to serve, but I'm not perfect.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think any of us can do that if I start spinning the camera around now. Be
Please don't.
unattractive.
I'm not going to.
You might remember I used to have a blue curtain behind me.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, my wife never liked it. She said, you need to you know, have something that sort of shows off your personality. And then I didn't want to use the backdrop, the door that you see behind me. We live in an old ranch house, and it was one of those old brown wooden doors that looked absolutely horrible on camera. So one day I went to Home Depot, bought a can paint,
Lovely.
put up some of my book covers, and all right, it's respectable.
It's good.
But you know, we want to, and it's the same thing. And it's, you know, there's so many ethical issues that I want to talk about concerning politics. And sometimes I do,
Yes,
because I
you
feel
do.
I just can't ignore them. But most of the time I don't, because I know that I'm going to alienate people. And we fight the battles we can win.
Right.
And I don't want to lose the ability to influence people in a positive way in areas where I can, because I've discredited with myself with them over something that I can't change anyway. Now, self-censorship is a real double-edged sword.
Yeah.
If we're censoring ourselves out of fear of repercussions, I think that's unhealthy. If we're censoring ourselves out of sort of a brand consistency and brand integrity, then I feel that's different, although sometimes I wonder if I'm rationalizing.
Yeah, because I sincerely enjoyed, and I know we're moving in a slightly different direction, but I sincerely enjoyed because you always did it in a positive way. You stated a position or an issue that was out there, and then you brought in the wise men and what they said about this, and then you had a dialogue about it that fostered a way to get people to think versus being at each other. And I found it refreshing. So, and I too, just us as professionals, if we self-censor, then are we ever our truest self? And if we can be our truest self and state our positions consistent with brand, the
Yeah.
people that care about what we want will continue to follow us. And maybe the others will or not, but should we care? So it is an interesting balance on where we put a stake in the ground and what we talk about.
I had a topic in my last week's column in Fast Company, and I was pretty sure my editor was not going to go for it. She was very enthusiastic about it, and the reception I got from the online community was very, very positive. Even though I basically do what I normally do, which is go after both sides. But it's good to know there are people that can appreciate that.
Yeah, no kidding.
But just that statement, it's a little bit inspiring for me because, again, like you, I like to put out the topics. I like to provide solutions so that, they can go away and either feel good or be able to navigate that challenge.
Yeah.
But I've been hiding a little bit too. So I am wondering, should I be a little bit more spicy or put out things again in positive context to get people to think differently, which is on brand, even if it's a topic that might get a bit of attention.
Yeah, it's so much of what we do here is just raising these kinds of questions, getting ourselves and encouraging others to think in these kinds of terms, because often there is no right answer. Often it's competing values.
Yeah.
I used to open up my my keynote with a joke about a miniskirt, and it was clever. It wasn't quite off color, but I was doing it because I was conscious of people making assumptions about who I was and what I was going to say, and I wanted to diffuse that right in the beginning. And I got a certain amount of feedback. Some people really liked it, and others felt it was not true to who I was and not consistent. And I finally decided to cut it, even though it's a really funny joke. I'll tell it to you in the second segment.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it that the joke is just bad? I mean, was it just like people were like, not so
So
much.
let's wrap up this segment here. And for those of you who are watching and listening, if you want to hear the joke and and enjoy other exclusive content, the backstage conversation, you can go to my Substack and you can become a premium member there, get access to that. Otherwise, thank you for watching and listening, and thank you, Coviello, Diane Helbig, Raj Tut. Really appreciate your insights, conversation, your transparency. And for those of you who are watching and listening, if you have a topic you'd like us to take up in the future, please go to my website, ethicsninja.com, use the contact information. If it's a compelling topic, we will definitely take it up for a future episode. And until then, remember to always continue grappling with the gray.